Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnis Hour. Lovely music behind me. This is Berlioz, Hector Berlioz, the first truly romantic composer, and his piece Harold in Italy, a wonderful piece of music that was written for Paganini, but Paganini didn't want to perform because he didn't think it was virtuosic enough. Kind of one of the funnier side notes of music history. Okay, where are we going today? Well, let's start with the picture behind us. What did I tell the art AI I wanted this time? So the prompt for this one was, Men in Black take robot Martian Christ away for interrogation. And this is the set of images that brought to mind for the AI. I thought some of them actually worked pretty well. I kind of like this one with the robot Christ being taken away from his parent, by the Men in Black, seemingly holding some sort of a biblical device. I kind of like this one too, with the Men in Black facing off against two different robots, one dressed in white, one dressed in black too. And the juxtaposition of a black Men in Black and a white Men in Black. Seems to like desert landscapes, which I guess is probably what you'd expect from algorithms programmed in Southern California. This one's kind of interesting. It looks like there's some kind of a dead thing there, and then there's three Men in Black, although wearing different kinds of black, and two nasty looking black Jedi robots in front, who presumably maybe killed this character, or maybe the Men in Black did. I don't know. Interesting that the Men in Black seem to be guarding some kind of weird arcane portal here. Art AI has some weird ideas. This one, I don't know. What's so special about that? Well, I guess they gave a little credit to the R2-D2 model of robot by maybe they're arguing over which one is the Christ. And this robot Man in Black says, no, the real Christ is R2-D2. That C-3PO guy you're dragging away is the wrong robot. These aren't the ones you want. These aren't the bots you want. I think was the line from Star Wars. Okay, where are we going with that today? I'm going to call this one Gateway Religions and Men in Black, moving some forward and holding some back. So where are we going? Gateway religions. Now, if you follow my channel for very long, you know that I sort of call what I teach omnism, which was the closest I could find to the way I approach science, religion, and philosophy, because I think the three must be mutually consistent or they're worthless, basically. If you think about it from a human perspective, if you don't hit on all three cylinders, you don't have a very good theory of everything, which is something I've been following with a little bit of humor. In the physics world, there's a lot of people thinking that they've got the theory of everything, and that's like the holy grail of physics, yet the vast majority of the scientific world completely rejects the spiritual side. And those that don't embrace one particular ideal in the spiritual or philosophical world, which I would contend is based upon obvious falsehoods in your basic assumptions. So let's talk about human religions for a second. Now, if you follow comparative mythology very much, you will know that the first religious concepts started coming into our cultural zeitgeist well before we had any language, well before we had even the ability to depict any sort of a religious concept. And so we've been forced to kind of read between the lines of what humanity was thinking when we were drawing pictures on caves, when perhaps some structures were created on this planet that don't seem to match where our species was at in an archaeological context at the time. And those of you who follow that subject should be aware that there's quite a bit of controversy over who built the oldest pyramids and the Sphinx, and who created some of the artifacts which have been found in Egypt, basically pots and things like that made out of the most difficult to work rocks at a resolution and a level of detail that defies modern engineers, modern material scientists, modern machinists. And there's quite a bit of scholarly and less scholarly debate over that right now. And if you follow that whole area, you know that there's been a recent kerfluffle over, I guess he calls himself an archaeologist. I think he's a jackass, Flint Dibble, and his big debate against Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan. Well, I have to tell you that both of those guys are kind of like, I would call them Numpty Dumpties to some extent. Graham Hancock is a great guy. He's doing great work. He's dedicated his life to exploring stuff that doesn't make sense in our history, and I credit him for that. However, he has a certain political view and spiritual view of rightness, correctness, that I think is embraced by a lot of his cult followers, and is, basically juxtaposed to the cult followers of the Flint Dibble class, which I would call, your establishment archaeology woke cult, which are basically people that represent the Marxist core of the academic world that has been dictating archaeology in opposition to the original explorers and discrediting the work of the people that the whole field was based on. If you know much about archaeology, you will know that one of the most famous early archaeologists, and there were many, by the way, all over, but one of the most famous was Heinrich Schliemann. And he is much discredited and pointed fingers at and bad mouth and everything else for his explorations, particularly at Troy, where, he dug through a lot of layers, did a lot of damage to stuff he didn't care about because he was looking for the Homeric Troy. Okay, that was his particular blind spot, if you will. Other early archaeologists were interested in biblical stories, trying to prove or disprove biblical stories. And, some of them did damage to biblical sites that, maybe didn't have to happen. Especially, there were a lot of sites explored for religious purposes where the artifacts were taken away and put in people's private collections or hidden away deep in the basement of the British Museum or the Smithsonian or the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, etc., for reasons unknown. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain why all this stuff is happening and where we're at today in a fairly succinct manner that will help you understand why we need to allow people to have these variety of beliefs, even if the beliefs are fairly easy to challenge with good evidence. Okay, so let's look at the major religions that are out there right now. You've got Christianity. Okay, the basis of Christianity is founded on a period of Roman and Jewish history, basically a period of conflict, and grew out of actually conflicting ideas of what went on there. And biblical scholars are really fascinated by this, also with a lot of the new archaeology coming out and trying to make a coherent picture out of it. And one of the most coherent pictures that is coming out of it is there were actually two main factions of Christianity, of early Christianity. One, which was very, very Jewish and very anti-Roman, that centered around a guy named James the Just, who is supposedly a brother of Jesus. And the other around this character, Paul, who was the cat that was running around with the full approval of the Roman government at the time, starting churches and organizing basically what became the Catholic Church. And the portions that are included in the New Testament include a large fraction of letters or supposed letters between Paul and various congregations, Corinthians, Ephesians, etc., etc. And a lot of the core beliefs of Christianity are actually expressed there and not really part of the Gospels, interestingly enough, except for the one Gospel which is considered latest. I believe it's Luke, that seems to have been written by a Pauline factionist, taking what was in the other ones and basically cleaning it up to support the Paul religion. And if you've listened to some of my other content, you will know that my explanation for that is that there indeed were two factions, actually more than two factions involved. If you know about the time frame we're talking about, you know that there were two competing families who claimed to be the rulers of Judea, of Israel. One which is in favor with Rome, the Herodian dynasty, and one which was like the old dynasty that the Romans had been oppressing and trying to eliminate. That was the Hasmonean or Maccabean dynasty. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I already talked about this elsewhere, but what I can tell you is that this is exactly how it was all supposed to play out. In order to bring about the conditions for completing I call it the Messiah shell game phase of the Gaia experiment, the experiment of this planet, which actually is part of a bigger experiment that goes back even further. This planet, I think, was created or developed maybe about, they're not quite sure about it, but maybe 7 or 8 billion years ago. And that was after having been part of other star systems, other supernovas, and congealing into this particular star system, which of course is part of the Milky Way galaxy, which has its own history. All of these histories at all levels are religious histories. They're all part of creation. And creation is a thought process. So basically, each of these religions has been a step in a thought process. A thought process that was one of not dictation by a higher power, not God telling you this is what's true, like many people in certain religions believe. No, this was basically, maybe it started out that way, but then basically God realized that creation wasn't going where he wanted it to, because too many people, too many cooks were spoiling the soup. And if you've ever been, watching or attending a cooking school or a cooking class, you will have an idea what I'm talking about. I never actually took a cooking class, but I did get to work on my cooking merit badge. And one of my favorite movies, which I will recommend here, is a old movie, Disney movie called Follow Me, Boys. And there's a classic scene there where the boys are out on a camping trip, and they're trying to earn their cooking merit badge and trying to come up with, making biscuits and pancakes and the things that Boy Scouts normally try to make on that sort of an outing, and burning things and having very limited success. And the main character's sweetheart comes along with a basket full of chicken and mashed potatoes and all sorts of good food to eat, thinking that she's going to save the boys from this disaster. And that's actually their first big fight, where he says, no, the boys got to learn it the hard way. They got to do it by the book. They got to earn their cooking merit badge. This would be cheating to give them a bunch of food and let them off the hook. And I think that's a great illustration of the problem of modern man. We've got a whole bunch of folks who think that they know how to cook things up better than God. They think, religion that worked for hundreds, thousands of years for a certain culture suddenly needs to be torn apart and replaced by not religion or a different religion. And this is the work of the adversary. This is anti-God. God doesn't demand worship. That's not the real God. And if you look through the Bible, you read the Old Testament in its original language, the original Hebrew, you will find that there's relatively few mentions of the real God. Why? El Elyon, God is called. That is the last fully awakened incarnation of God, before God decided, you know what, this isn't going to work unless I talk all of the old family members into taking the bitter pill of reincarnation amnesia. And this is the game we've been playing ever since then. And not everyone took the pill, because God couldn't force them to. That would have been violating his own commandment of karma, forcing his power on everybody else, taking away their free will. And that's something that, if God wasn't really sure about that, he would have been a tyrant already. And there were times where God was tyrannical. If you look at the El Elyon phases of other cultures, you will see that in the Vedas, the chief god, at least the chief god that was present, Vishnu was not always necessarily a good guy. Could be fooled, could be misled, could actually do a lot of damage, a lot of bad through trying to be the good leader. You look in the Greek and Roman traditions, and Zeus, or Deus Pater, Jupiter, the leader of the gods, not basically a king, but not an almighty, all-powerful one. The father of the gods, not this nonsense notion of the Christians and Jews and Muslims of almighty micromanaging super tyrant God, which is not true. But it's a gateway religion, and that's where I'm getting to with this. All of these religions serve some purpose. Basically, childish people who don't really have an interest in religion but want to have some guidance on how to handle their life morally need some sort of moral basis for what they do. Now, an atheist would argue, well, you don't need that. You just, you can have all the morality without God. And we're seeing all around us basically the effects of that. You can't. You need to have a creator. You need to have some story that basically makes morality a priority. Because if it's not a priority, if making the right choice is not a high priority on your list, you're going to cut corners when you're making a virus, or making a vaccine, or making a social media platform, making an algorithm to censor certain people. And that's tyranny. That's going to lead you down the path of tyranny, and we've seen the results of that in spades in the recent years. Now we're basically facing this situation of you've got a big faction called generally the woke cult. This is the pop globalist ones that have been following mainstream media, which is largely bought and paid for by two basic agents in this whole thing. One is the Chinese Communist Party, who obviously have an ambition to rule the world and get even with the Westerners who humiliated us for a century. And this older faction, represented by the World Economic Forum, which is a continuation of basically the European elites who invented communism, the Marxists, which you can see how they would become very firmly aligned with Marxist forces across the world. Marxism is a useful idiocy religion. It's an anti-religion, so a core tenet of Marxism is atheism. And the whole reason for that is that you substitute worship of the party and the party leaders for God. So as far as the Chinese are concerned, or they're told to be concerned, Xi Jinping is God. And if you look at the approved versions of religions within China, they have to have, pictures of Chairman Mao and Xi Jinping and little red book sayings of Mao and the new Xi Jinping thought books taught side by side with a Chinese translation of the Bible, which has been approved by Marxists. All agreed to by the Pope, by the way, who is the biggest fucking Antichrist Pope I think the Catholic Church has ever had. an example of how serving power, grasping material power, is inevitably going to turn you against God. That's not what God's all about. Once you go down the route of Almighty, my God, this is like where things start going south. This is where you start doing things like having crusades, or having jihads, or getting a bunch of idiot college students to create a bunch of havoc in the name of terrorist group. It's really bad, evil stuff, and it only serves communism. Anti-religion. If you're anti-religion, if you're atheist, you are, by definition, playing for the adversary, playing for the bad guy, God's enemy. That's the definition. The very definition of adversary is somebody who's against God. And El Elyon, God the Most High, had a lot of adversaries. If you read the Bible, literally the Old Testament, it's a story of a whole bunch of gods, of different people fighting with each other and congealing around the story of one people, the Hebrews, and their specific God, Yahweh. Whatever the pronunciation is, we don't know because the vowels aren't there. But the truth behind that is that at this point nobody knew who God was, because like the Hindu religion teaches, there were many gods, each incarnating, having their own line. And where Hinduism gets things wrong is that their idea is, well, all gods are fine, you can worship whatever you want. And you've got a good half of the Hindu world worshiping gods of destruction and believing the nonsense that creation is just going to go around and around and around and around until we hop off the merry-go-round. And this is nonsense. This is spiritual nonsense that encourages people to follow fake gurus that say, just do what I tell you and you will become enlightened. You will go to nirvana. You will go to the highest heaven. Feed me, feed me, feed me. And this is the nonsense of Buddhism. Okay? You got this cat Buddha who sat under a Bodhi tree and had people bring him fruit and feed him every day and get fat sitting there contemplating the universe till he died. What did that accomplish? Except show people how to be lazy, fat bastards taking advantage of other people. Okay, there's something that doesn't quite fit with every religion, and that's why we have so many religions. But for different people, there are certain benefits. Okay, if you are the kind of person who is kind of lazy and just wants to get by and doesn't have big ambitions, Buddhism may be actually just fine for you. You'll suffer and do what you have to do because they tell you to, and bring gifts to the king. This is also kind of the Numby-Gumby version of Christianity. The Pauline version. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Turn the other cheek. Close your eyes to evil. It's all love. It's all love. Okay, this is a choice, but it's a choice with consequences, okay? And one of the big problems with where we're at today is some of our gateway religions are not working well anymore. They've been corrupted beyond repair. Christianity used to work pretty well for most countries. Why? Because it was a religion that was married to the Western work ethic, the Western ideal of individual responsibility and freedom. To the extent that Christianity was corrupted by the idea of, no, you need a big power to take care of everything for you and tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, which started with the Catholic Church. right? They wanted to control everybody. They wanted to basically have everybody kowtowing to the Pope and or their bishop or their cardinals, and basically under the threat of excommunication if they didn't do what they did. And that didn't work all that well, did it? Many rulers said, hell with this. Go ahead and excommunicate me. I'll start another religion. That was the story of Henry VIII and how we got the Anglican Church, which became the Episcopalian Church in the U.S. when it sort of got divorced from England. Okay? What I'm saying is all of these are okay places to start spiritually. They have their dark sides, and that's where omnism comes in. Okay? My teaching is that you should take whatever you currently believe and be eyes wide open enough to modify it just a little bit to allow science and reason, logic in, to take away its dark side and keep the good stuff in the middle. And the good stuff is, the whole purpose of religion, of spirituality, is to try to help us to get along better together and not hurt each other. Okay? Not sin against each other. And this is why I speak out against atheism, because atheism and scientific materialism basically says, oh, we don't have a choice, we don't have any free will, so whatever I do is just what I was supposed to do, and therefore you can't blame me for it. That's what they're teaching now, some of these highfalutin scientists. Scientists? I'm sorry, Sapolsky, I forget what his first name is, but the jackass that is preaching that we have no free will, you're a fucking idiot. A satanic idiot. Robert Sapolsky, I think it is. Fucking idiot. And I don't mind saying that to your face. In fact, you would sit us down in a room and I would argue you into the floor, you stupid fucking idiot bastard who think you know everything. The Dawkins and other signature atheists, you're so pathetically stupid and narcissistic you don't even realize it. Now, some of the fundamentalists are almost as bad, and that's part of the problem. That's actually serving the adversary. These debates that they're constantly having of religion versus atheism, only considering the Christian point of view, by the way. I don't know that I've ever seen a stage where they had representatives of multiple religions, or certainly not one where they've ever had a representative of the omnist way of thinking. Why is that? Why doesn't that become mainstream, I wonder? People feel threatened by it. They feel that their power might be threatened if somebody ever really got what was going on. Because every cult that is run for the means of power has been corrupted by the adversary. And the true teachings of Jesus, whoever Jesus was, whoever the real Christ of that era was, the important teachings were that there is another life for those who have faith. There are many rooms in the Father's kingdom. Who is the Father? El Elyon, God the Most High. What are all those rooms? Well, they're like the breakout rooms for different specialties, different specialty gods and goddesses and cults. Okay, there's a room where the top dog god is the god of music. There's another room where it's the goddess of dance. I don't know. Maybe there's multiple ones. There's no reason for there to be one. And how that is all kept track of is through karma. This is another of the shortcomings of Hinduism, that the two big problems with Hinduism are, one, they broke the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Who is me? El Elyon, God the Most High. Who is pretending to be El Elyon is whoever was giving the messages to Moses. And we don't know the absolute truth of that story. It's a very old story. Now, I tell you that what I believe after studying the history of it is that Moses was an Egyptian prince, not a Hebrew. Was an Egyptian prince who would have been Thutmose the fifth, but was exiled, disappears from the Egyptian records towards the end of his father's, Amenhotep III's reign, and then Amenhotep IV ends up taking becoming the pharaoh and changing his name to Akhenaten and starting the Egyptian monotheist cult, the Amarna period, which basically didn't end very well. It lasted. It built this fancy city, new city, and tried to push everybody into this new monotheist cult. And nobody was having it. He was very unpopular, and his line only lasted a very short time. And then Tutankhamun, who was originally Tutankhaten, ended up being the last one of that line, and off pretty young in life. And then this new dynasty took over, eventually settled under the Ramses the Great, the pharaoh who was supposed to have chased the Hebrews back over the Red Sea. Okay, every bit of archaeological evidence shows that the biblical story is somewhat accurate, but not completely accurate. In fact, the archaeological record shows that the Egyptians basically controlled Canaan, the area where Israel is, during that whole period. And of course, it was kind of a frontier area, and they often had skirmishes with other kingdoms, the Assyrians and the Hittites, for instance. But there's absolutely no evidence that there was a captivity in Egypt of the Hebrews. There is no evidence that Joseph of the coat of many colors was sold by his brothers into slavery in Egypt, and that there were Hebrew slaves in Egypt. Absolutely none. There's no Hebrew inscriptions in Egypt from that period. There's no physical evidence. It's just not there. And so what I'm telling you is consistent with the evidence. And this is the essence of what adding omnism to your religion entails. It entails, okay, I'm a Christian. My core beliefs are this. I believe, that the teachings of Jesus were the best thing since buttered bread. Okay, learn those teachings. But learn that those teachings were never recorded. Nobody that we can ask or that we know knew Jesus recorded anything he said. And in fact, most of the Quran is basically repeating sayings of Jesus, Isa. In fact, there were other books going around that were just not the Gospels, but sayings of Jesus that were very popular. And in that era, before persecutions and heretics and all of these battles and crusades, that tried to wipe out every kind of heresy there was, people just liked what Jesus was saying. Like the idea that, okay, life's going to be hard, but if I'm good, if I, am a good person, I follow the commandments, I try to get along well within my community, I don't let bad guys tyrannize my people, I don't let jerks profiteer from religion at the temple. Many people forget about that scene about the temple. Jesus didn't like the idea that, people were profiteering from selling chickens and goats and cattle for sacrifices. Or probably wouldn't have liked the idea later on that the Catholic Church sold indulgences for sin. Would forgive you for just about anything if you slip the priest a little something, or the bishop a little something, or the Pope a little something. You could buy salvation in the Catholic Church. Absolutely. And you still can. It's a sad fact of that religion. And Catholics need to own up to that fact. They need to admit their sins. The Pope is not infallible. The Pope is not God's messenger on earth. The Pope is fundamentally just the Bishop of Rome. And that's how the whole split came with the Orthodox Church, because the Patriarch of Antioch and the Patriarch of Alexandria and the Patriarch of Constantinople said, hey, wait a minute. We don't owe any allegiance to this guy in Rome. Especially not now that the empire is split. Or later on, when there was no empire and Rome was basically a kingdom of barbarians. Hell with that. Okay, all of the divisions are political. The division between Judaism and Christianity is political. The division between those and Islam is political. The division between Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam is political. The divisions between these New Age cults, the cosmic oneness, numby-gumbies, and the Tesla worshippers, and the Mother Nature worshippers, and Christ consciousness, all this bullshit, it's political. Okay? Most of the new cults that are springing up are very political. They're driven by feminism. That's where the cult of Mary Magdalene comes from. That's actually where the cult of Mother Mary comes from, that so many Catholics cling to. This breaks the first commandment. You revere Mother Mary more than you do God. How are you going to be saved by that? The Jewish religion is a funny one, because once you translate it more properly, once they start talking about everything being all about Yahweh, the one God, you kind of go off the rails, and this one God is credited with a lot of bad shit. Telling the Hebrews to go kill a bunch of people because God doesn't like them. God doesn't break his own commandments, fools. Thou shalt not kill. That's not God telling you to go kill somebody else. In fact, the story of David and Goliath is a story of genocide. The Amalekites and some of these other people that David led the Hebrew armies to victory against, They had giants. They had some weird beliefs. They had some weird cats. Some of them were good guys. Some of them were bad guys. Okay, I'm not saying that their religion was perfect. And there are many, many religions that are evil because they worship the adversary. They worship sin. Okay? And so to some extent there is truth and untruth. Okay, if you were wiping out a neighbor kingdom that engaged in human sacrifice and went to war for the purpose of getting victims for your sacrifices, or sacrifice their own children to appease their nasty god, that would have been a holy war to the extent that you eliminated this sinful religion. And it's pretty easy to see sin. It's all around you right now. You've got satanic cults operating almost in plain sight, advocating child grooming, sexual, and mental tyranny. This is essentially what terrorists do with their children. The Palestinian children in Gaza have been brainwashed to hate. They have been fed a pack of lies about what was going on there so that they think that there will never be peace until all the Jews are killed. That's the same message that the Nazis were teaching children in Germany. Have we learned nothing in the last century? Okay, so gateway religions, you've got to look hard at your religious beliefs and sort out what is sin. And it's really pretty easy. If you look at the 10 Commandments and then you add the idea of karma, do unto others. This is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Okay? Now, that means that we don't punish others for their sins in a vengeful, spiteful way. That's why we don't want to, flay them alive or draw and quarter them like was common punishment in the Middle Ages. If a crime does deserve death, and there are crimes that do deserve death, molesting a child, I think, is a crime that deserves death. Killing a bunch of people in cold blood, especially repeat offenses, does deserve death. It's only good sense. And death is not the end. Death is a chance to go try over. And this is the good part of reincarnation. Reincarnation actually was part of Christianity early on. There's much evidence for that, and it was suppressed by the Catholic Church because they were worried that if people were oppressed by the emperor or their kings, that they would just say, hell with this, I'm gonna commit suicide and move on to the next world. And so they made suicide a sin, a cardinal sin. That's kind of sick, isn't it? I mean, people should have, if they don't own anything, they should own their own life. They should own it carefully, though. We should be very, very open and honest about what the consequences might be. Okay? And so if you understand that incarnation is an opportunity, it is basically being cast in a role. And if you are reincarnating, you chose that role. If you're a newbie, it's your first incarnation, okay, it was chosen for you. There was a spot in the game that nobody wanted to play, and we pulled a soul out of the hat, out of the Akashic records, the source, and put it in this spot. and you get to play that character. Now, if you're in that situation and you don't like the way you played the game, I can't fault you for wanting to commit suicide. What I can do is say that, every role is there for a reason. The minor roles are not big reasons, but they might be. Okay, and this is what you need to understand about how all this works. Okay, each version of God is the center of a new time space. Those versions are planned ahead of time. It's like a scenario in a video game. Okay, if you look at most video games, they're not completely free form. They have like maybe several main scenarios you can choose from. And there's some variability along the way of those main characters. But, basically, a lot is already kind of planned out. That's exactly the way creation works. Okay, and the idea is that you simulate from the point of the last, where the last game started going south. Okay, and from a cultural standpoint, this would be the point at which you start tipping over to cultural entropy. Just like if you're only talking about physical universe, this is the point at which, okay, you start with, if you had a Big Bang and you let that proceed, there would be a certain point at which there would be maximum order, and then entropy would start taking over. And as some scientists are predicting, the future is going to be very dark and very cold, and everything will go to its lowest energy state, and they're no, we can't have that. We need some sort of a replay Big Bang. We need to make a cyclical universe again. I listen to these people arguing over these theories, and it's just hilarious because they're just so far off field. And it would be so much easier for them to understand their field if they just understand the first thing about God as a spiritual scientist, as a consciousness, a conscious creator of virtual realities. And you only have to look at what we've done with games in our culture. We're doing the exact same thing that God did for the same reasons. Because we got a bunch of people who have extra time on their hands and extra money on their hands, and we want to figure out a way how to monopolize their time and their money. That's basically what video games are all about. That's basically what social media as a video game is all about. That's basically what streaming media is all about. That's just, more of a vegetative game. That's a game for plants who want to sit in front of their tube all day and be a couch potato, and let the tube tell them what to think, how to think, what to buy, what's popular, who to follow. This is their favorite customer, right? The harder ones are the ones that, they want some social interaction. They want to go to social media, so they try to find a way, okay, let's make a religion for this target audience. And they carve out little spaces, and they send you messages and notifications that will gradually pull you into the hive mind, the religion that they are trying to create. They're playing God with you in a not very responsible way, because the real God defined what sin was. Okay, and sin is violating the 10 Commandments or violating the the one rule of karma. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You don't get to control and manipulate others against their will. In secret, with secret algorithms and deceptive programming, fake news, false narratives, emotionalized narratives. And that's what they're doing. That's a sin. Okay? To the extent that you're involved in media, and pretty much anybody who has a podcast, like I do, is involved in media, to the extent that you are telling them bullshit that you can't back up, that benefits you, happy lies that pull in subscribers and sponsors and ad revenue, you're playing the Satan game. You're playing for the adversary. You are sinning. Now, many content creators are pretty much aware of that, and they're doing their best not to sin, and still somehow support themselves. And this is kind of the dark thing about the milieu we're in today with the state of the internet and the state of social media and the state of streaming media, is that you could be canceled at any time if you don't toe the line. So you basically got, the Orwellian term is big brother, but I think it's much more a big sister problem. Okay? Think about a typical family. A big brother will defend their little sister from being teased and raped and molested by other boys. A big sister tries to protect everything, wants to control everything. Any of you who have ever grown up in a large family where the eldest child was a girl knows what the big sister effect is like. Can be. Usually if the eldest is a girl, she tends to be extremely bossy in kind of a motherly way. She tends to be the surrogate mother of the family. And often that's the way things work these days, because the mother's off working or whatever, and the eldest sibling, or the eldest girl, tends to be the one who kind of takes over as the surrogate mother. And it's kind of a dark thing, because there's a natural instinct to be motherly in women, but they can't mother everybody, right? So they tend to mother in sort of a dictatorial way that makes it easy for them. Okay? And I've been a parent multiple times, so I know what this is like. And believe me, guys have their own problems with children. We tend to be less patient and to let more stuff go by because we just don't want to deal with it. And that's a plus sometimes, because we let kids get into bigger messes earlier on, make their mistakes early and often. And that's the good side of traditional male parenting. Women tend to want to protect their children from everything. And on the average, they try to shield them, and they try to keep them happy and nice, and teach them, sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what girls are made of, right? And that is useful up to an extent, but it has its limitations. Women tend to be more gullible, more easy to fool, more easy to corrupt. And a little known fact that most people who are honest will admit is that women are much more likely to cheat on a partner than men are, on average. This is the truth. And And it's all wrapped up into the mythology of our species, the sexual politics. At any rate, so gateway religions are important, but we've been creating new religions that are very harmful, that don't actually serve humanity, they actually divide humanity more. Okay? This divide of male-female is not helpful. Okay? If you think that God's got to be a woman, or I won't have any God that's not a woman, you're an evil person. You are a blind, narcissistic atheist, Satanist. I'm sorry, that's the only way I can put it, because El Elyon, God the Most High, in every account, after getting a chance to incarnate in the human species, has decided, you know what? I prefer to be male. And that's what God chooses. I can tell you that God hasn't always been male. God was female once, was a bear. That's the only known female incarnation of El Elyon, was as a bear. That maybe gave us the big bear constellation and the interesting bear mythology that goes back, ties into, oh gosh, the Russian bear. Famous association there, isn't it? In the tribes of North America, the bear is very important in some tribes. We can go into that in another time. At any rate, God, capital G, is not a woman. Never will be. Never was. In the time before sex, God was nothing, neither. Okay, and yes, there were earlier versions of creation that did not have sex. Okay, if your idea of what creation is all about requires sex, you already don't understand how creation started. It wasn't about having cosmic sex. It was having cosmic ideas. And early creation was about ideas. The earliest ideas of God were the first other gods, and they had no sex either. It was only later on, when sex was invented, that God started having sex. Why? It's kind of funny. Sex was actually invented by the adversary. After DNA was being used to create soul vehicles to more quickly populate and terraform planets, and basically as a way to make pretty toys. That's the era we were in. Is there was a time where the things that had DNA did not have much consciousness. They were beasts. And we see evidence of beast level hominids before humanity existed. And yeah, they were not that bright. They were just, walking monkeys, basically. They had no culture. They had the most rudimentary of language to be able to communicate food. Like a dog or a pack of dogs or cats would, or a herd of beasts. They were not that much more advanced, and they would not have become more advanced if they had not been engineered to add this ability to grow in consciousness, to become aware of spirituality. That's why this species was created. The first version of it had a ability to have a level of spiritual awareness that we don't always get anymore. And the problem with that was that they were easy to use and abuse. This is how the pyramids, the oldest pyramid, got created. This is how all these Cyclopean walls with this incredibly perfect cuts and weird shapes that have lasted how long through earthquake zones. These perfect stone vessels that were found in Egypt. That's how they were all created. Okay? They were all created because we had spiritual technology, spiritual awareness that didn't exist anymore. It was taken away. It wasn't taken away as punishment. It was taken away because we weren't converging on a better version of space-time, which a better version of creation. Okay? Why? Well, the adversary was still winning at a certain point, and the adversary has always been about, let's find a way to destroy, to make things so bad that they just keep falling apart until we have total entropy. That's always been the game at the highest level. And the difference now is it's being played out with the Messiah shell game, I call it. We've been playing this for a long time with different chosen species, different chosen people. Humanity is not the only chosen species that has ever occupied this planet. In fact, we're not the most advanced either. We're probably the dumbest and most limited. Our sensory apparatus is the most limited. Our spiritual apparatus is the most limited. But because we are finishing this process, people are starting to wake up. This is what the ascension is. Humanity is becoming a spiritual species again. This is not an easy process, by the way, because the first level of spiritual awareness is fifth dimensional consciousness. This is what's true in all the New Age stuff. You start becoming aware of spiritual stuff, synchronicities, visions that sort of fit together and make sense. You start developing a sense that you might have your own part in a religious plan. Now that is a good thing, but it's also a challenging thing because it's going to make you challenge your traditional religious upbringing. And you're not at the highest level of consciousness yet, so if you pull yourself out of the hump of, Bible-belting Baptist or Methodist or Catholic or, traditional Islamist or Hindu or whatever, or Buddhist, you're liable to fall into another trap. And this is why one of the movies that I recommend you watch with your kids or by yourself, is Disney's Pinocchio. This is a very spiritual story, even though it doesn't talk about God, which is kind of the dark side of the postmodernist era of culture. They were trying to wean people from God and make them think of other things as God. The God in Pinocchio is kind of split between the blue fairy, who is like this, good witch that always brings the magic wand and fixes everything when it's gone too bad, and then this other little god of Jiminy Cricket, the conscience of Pinocchio. Well, of those two, the truer one is actually Jiminy Cricket. He's the one that's there, going through the adventures with Pinocchio and warning him, hey, don't do this, you're going to regret it. please, please. And then he never listens to his conscience, and then he gets in trouble, and then eventually the blue fairy has to save him and pull him out of the fire. This is New Age nonsense religion. Okay, the blue fairy's not going to pull you out of the fire except to pull you into the blue fairy kingdom, which is not a wonderful place. Okay, there's no blue fairy that has dedicated their entire existence to making you happy. There are folks that will say that. That's the World Economics basic forum's basic motto is, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Right. Seems like I've heard that religion before. That's basically communism in a nutshell. And it's an evil religion. It is a cult. It is a lie. Anybody who buys into it is going to be very, very disappointed at what they purchased and not able to make a return, as the Chinese people are discovering now. No deposit, no return. Once the money starts flowing, once you're no longer useful to the state, they will dispose of you. They will harvest your organs. They will just make you disappear. They will certainly make your bank account disappear and take all your money from you, take your houses from you, take your business from you, anything they want for the good of the state. Okay, where do Men in Black come in? We've kind of missed part of this subject. So, Men in Black is another of these, kind of cult following Hollywood movies that has some basis in truth. It was kind of part of the sales job to try to get people blaming the FBI and the CIA for everything. Oh, if only we didn't have, the TLAs in government, everything would be perfect. And at the same time, not mentioning that the reason that those organizations weren't perfect was because they were infiltrated by the adversary, by evil, by the evils of foreign governments. And yes, there were many, many Russian agents in the CIA, especially because the CIA was formed right after World War II, when the Russians had just been our best friends and the British's best friends. And there was, if you look at the history of the era, there were agents that were double and triple and quadruple agents that they were just allowing to get by during World War II, because everybody was fighting the Nazis. Everybody was fighting fighting Japan. And that never really got cleaned up. The FBI, most people aren't aware that the FBI was pretty much the creation of one very sick man, J. Edgar Hoover, who is a transvestite gay man in an era where you couldn't talk about that stuff. But he was able to use his... And see, this is the dangerous thing about sin. If you get away with the little sins, the little narcissistic things, they will become bigger. Okay? And the way that J. Edgar Hoover got so much control, and at one point, basically, J. Edgar Hoover was the de facto president of the United States, the unelected ruler of the United States. And you can look back in history and you can see that that was true pretty much up until the old bastard died. That presidents were so afraid of him that they would basically do anything he said. And so, the fiction of J. Edgar Hoover was that he was the one that stopped organized crime. that knocked out John Dillinger and stopped the night Chicago died, all this stuff. It was complete bullshit. It was complete fiction. There was one agent within the FBI who was a pretty good guy, a guy named Purvis, Melvin Purvis, who was the one that did all the good stuff, and then J. Edgar Hoover took all the credit and built up this big organization around power. And everything J. Edgar Hoover did throughout his career was about amassing power. The same way the Communist Party amassed powers, by the way, which is basically by letting people get away with all sorts of bad shit, corruption and whatnot, but keeping track of them. Got a little book, Checking It Twice. And anybody who's lived in China knows that's the way it is in China. You can get away with almost anything, especially if you got money, until somebody wants to call you down to the carpet. And I've seen that personally. Absolutely. I can testify to that happening. So don't tell me I'm full of shit. I lived there for a long time. I know how that works. And that's why for well over 20 years now, every Chinese who starts a business, starts making money, the first thing they want to do is get that money out of China. Get some of their family out of China, because they know that this totalitarian government will turn on you in a moment and will eat its own. As soon as somebody feels like you're a rival for their power, or they're envious of how much money you've got, and you only have to look at what happened to Jack Ma to know that's true. And people say, well, that's good. He had too much power. He had too much money. We don't need billionaires. Well, where did that money go? It didn't go to the people. When Jack Ma's empire was taken away from him, it was given to 5 old family communist tools. These princes and princelings, or princesses and princelings of the party. The old guard, they're kind of like the, really China's not much different than the empires that came before. It's a totalitarian regime, always has been. This whole idea of Confucianism, service to the state, is complete bullshit. And this is bullshit that they have spread to the West. All of this nonsense about Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, that's all the good. It's bullshit. Everybody who lived over there knows it, that it was used as just like a cover to make the elite look good while they did whatever they wanted in their back rooms and abused the people. That's exactly how Tibet was run under the Dalai Lamas. It was not this noble, wonderful place, Shangri-La, perfection of religion. And, if you've listened to my other content, you know that, in fact, the Dalai Lama was, and always will be, an agent of the globalist elite. He was tutored by an SS Ahnenerbe officer during World War II. The only way an SS officer would have been in Tibet for all of World War II and gotten to tutor the Dalai Lama is because of the occult involvement of the SS. This is the core thing of Nazism. And yes, the Buddhist movement, the Neo-Buddhist movement, the New Age Buddhist movement is a cult. It is a cult that has been feeding this cult that is now converting to Islam and saying, we need to wear a kafia and declare our faith in Allah. It's a cult. It's all related to this cat the Antichrist, 500 years ago, Sabbatai Zevi, a renegade Jewish rabbi who proclaimed himself the Messiah and had most of the Jewish world believing it, who basically taught that, well, the way to bring about the kingdom, the fulfillment of everything, is through sin. Being virtuous didn't accomplish anything. Look, we're just as bad as we ever were and just as oppressed as we ever were. So let's just sin our way. And that will bring down the governments that are oppressing us. Sounds a little bit like communism, doesn't it? This is the cult that created communism. It is the cult that created fascism. It is the cult that created postmodernism. The idea that, well, God's dead, we don't need him anymore. Look at all the damage religion has caused. We just got to have no religion. This is a cult. It is a satanic cult, an antichrist cult. And we're seeing the repercussions of it to this day. Every single power in the world is corrupted by this cult. They became the Frankists in the next generation because of the guy that took over after Sabbatai Zevi. And that's when they infiltrated Europe and started inspiring this theosophical movement of Madame Blavatsky and Manly P. Hall and all these occultists who are still very influential today. You've got a whole bunch of people and also spreading this idea of power Gnosticism, which is basically satanic worship justified by, I'm using my magic for good. This is the source of the Wiccan movement, the source of neo-paganism going on today, which is not what paganism used to be, not what the polytheistic religions of old were like. Old polytheism was about, okay, each city has their own Elohim, their own demigod. All of those traced back to, if you take the biblical story as true, the story was that there were 70 of these original Elohim that came on an expedition to basically explore this planet. And the initial expedition was one of exploitation. They were looking for resources here because this planet had a lot of gold and other rare earth minerals that are not as easy to find as you might guess. That group got tired of doing all the dirty work, and they came up with one of them came up with the idea, well, let's elevate, let's tinker with these hominids and make them just a little bit smarter so they can be our slaves. And let's put, the organ in them that we know is going to be easy to make them enslaved, which is the pineal gland. It is not the source of enlightenment. It is a conduit to the spiritual realms. It can be used to contact gods and demons, good guys and bad guys, and it can be used by them to program you. It's like being chipped. You're already chipped by the spiritual world because you have a pineal gland. And these people that are telling you, oh, you got to decalcify your pineal gland, we should make everyone take ayahuasca or DMT and then all our political leaders would be enlightened. These guys are idiots. Absolutely stupid idiots that know absolutely nothing about how spirituality works. The fifth dimension of consciousness is not enlightenment. Not anywhere close. It is like the first awareness of these other realms. The first ability to have a more deep communication through the pineal gland. It's a very dangerous, dangerous place where you can be used and manipulated, and you don't necessarily know if it's for good or evil. And they will feign a false identity. These entities will say, yeah, I'm Jesus. Just do what I say and your life will be perfect. Just let Jesus lead. These entities will say, oh, I'm Mother Nature. Oh, I'm the source. They'll tell you whatever they want you to think so that they can get control of you. And unless you resist, unless you ask for their credentials, unless you challenge them, they will assimilate you. This is why the Catholic Church has exorcists, because they know that those things are real. Other religions have their version of an exorcist because they know there are evil spirits who will take over your body, who will pump you up with maybe doing some good things like making you live longer or giving you material wealth or whatever, success, but then they take it out in karma. They make you do bad things in the name of good. And ultimately, they will pull you into their spiritual realm after you die. And that's not the highest heaven. It might be the heaven you want. I'm not saying it isn't. There are many, many rooms in the heavens, many rooms in the Father's kingdom. And most of you will never get to the point where you are a conscious being in the highest heaven. That's only for the senior creators. That's only for the characters that earn their way to God level, who have their own universe, their own religion, their own afterlife. And not even all of those, some of those, when they reach that level, they will come to the highest heaven and they will get to have a little celebration dinner. Okay, now you're a God level character. Are you going to play by the rules of karma? Are you going to participate healthily in this community here? And if they say no, the door to their little place in heaven is closed. Sorry, you can't live here. We'll let you visit again if you go up another level and give you another chance to play by God's rules. Might be no again, and eventually they may have a full 12-dimensional consciousness awareness, have their own fully controlled universe, and they may run it for evil. That's okay. If they can attract souls there, they deserve to be there. Okay, this is the whole point of creation. Why we need many religions, because it's a sorting process. Not one religion suits everybody. God doesn't want to control everybody's lives. He doesn't want to micromanage every soul ever existed. That's the whole point of creating a multiverse. To give us the chance to separate, not to be all one. So the men in black, there are higher consciousness folks that know more about what's going on right now. And they are at all levels. Some know more from a human political standpoint. Some know more from a alien craft UAP standpoint. Some know more from a religious standpoint. They, to a large extent, are trying to use what they know in what they think is a good way. The ones that are in charge of a government, for instance, they're trying to keep the information secret because they're afraid that it would destabilize their government. It would destabilize their society, destabilize their religion, if all of the information that is known at the highest levels came out. And this is why disclosure has taken so long. And it's not all bad. It's not somebody's trying to keep candy from the little babies. I want my disclosure. They have a good reason for doing it. Because let me tell you, I am telling you that this is going to be very discombobulating for a lot of people. And this is why I say keep your religion. You don't need to drop it all when the truth comes out. And if the truth comes out in a way that is being sold as, okay, religion is dead, you better not be a Christian anymore, you better go subscribe to the New Age Catholic Church, this is evil. This is not based on the truth. What I am telling you is the truth. There is no traditional religion that does not need to become a little bit more open-minded to adapt to where we're heading, to adapt to the fact that there are other species on this planet and from other planets and in other dimensionalities. Yes, to all of the above. And this is part of what's dividing us right now. I mean, you've got the UAP community at each other's throats thinking it's one or this or that or one or the other, or it's all foreign powers. No, it's all of the above. And the darker forces are using that division to create more division and to sow doubt and to destroy countries. Because the adversary wants humanity to become one world government, one world religion. We will tell you what to believe every day, what to think every day, how to think it, and we will reward the little kiddies who think right, and we will punish the little ones who don't think right. Okay, if that is your idea of a good God, you had better start praying for something better. That ain't God. That's essentially turning this world into an adversary outpost. And we're nowhere near winning this battle against the adversary in this universe. We're only finishing up day 7 of creation. This was the day of testing. Day center, a new center point around which James Webb Space Telescope is telling us the universe is twice as old as we thought. What's up with that? You should hear some of the wild-ass theories that are going around about that, and it's simple to me. Yes, the Big Bang did happen in a previous version of space-time. It still does have a vestigial presence because we have to, with each new center of space-time, we have to try to link up as best as we can with the previous version. Because if you don't, you have what I call time quakes, or you might think of as Mandela Okay? In the old days, those discontinuities could be pretty major. And the cosmic microwave background is a major discontinuity. It's a major giveaway that, whoa, something doesn't quite add up here, because it looks like there was a big bang. And there's going to be things like that from early versions of space-time. That, okay, there's another one that's like the polarity of other types of radiation looking out, and there is evidence that this planet is actually the center of creation. It's not well publicized yet, and it's going to be really challenging. Galileo that this planet really, sorry, it is. Actually, it has been mostly, but God hasn't always incarnated on this planet. And the center of creation is always the Creator. Not almighty, not all powerful, but the anchor of the whole simulation. The anchor of the whole multiverse. And this most important physical universe in the multiverse that is the place of testing. This is the ultimate test tube. The other universes are much more flexible. The highest luckily for the people who are going there now, it's the and that's where the daughters of men are. The good daughters, the karmic daughters, not the Lilithian daughters, not the fembots, not the feminist, we hate men bunch. That doesn't happen up in the highest heaven. It's anti-creative. The highest heaven is much like 1950s USA. And the observations of the Messiah during his lifetime. It's verse to keep that pattern going, so that in the future, when we go out and explore all these new galaxies that we're seeing in the James Webb Space Telescope, all these new planets that we're realizing, oh, that might be habitable. Let's go send an expedition there, when we figure out how to send those expeditions out. That will give to lead these expeditions, who are going to be the main characters new planets. And those beginnings may be very far from here. We may not be aware of them as humanity from Earth until we develop a technology, or we're given a technology that allows us to go there, to communicate there. Okay? It's not going to all come back at once. In fact, many of the species coming here are finding that when they get here, their technology starts. They got inside the containment field of this test tube of this experiment, and not very well anymore. We can't control it. That's what the truth is about Roswell and some of these other crash sites. And this is why it's been hidden, because some of the technologies were useful, some of the materials were useful, but didn't work the way that they thought it would. And there were many false attempts to, oh, let's see if we can make this thing take off again. And oops, we had an explosion, or oops, it went and disappeared and we don't know where it is now. Based on older versions of karma, older versions of the energy favorite about Athena. And actually I'm going to close with something that I discovered yesterday that I think will be important. It turns out that if you look at the word that is used for virgin in the Old and New Testaments, in the Hebrew prophetic text, not the word that it's just translated virgin because that is, basically what it was supposed to be in the Christian era. Now, the oldest copy of the Torah is actually Septuagint, Greek translation. And the word they use for virgin there is parthenos. Ring a bell? Parthenogenesis is being born from the mind. The Parthenon, the temple of Athena, the goddess that was sprung, fully formed from God's mind, was the only virgin goddess was Karma. In fact, the oldest version of karma that we have any mythological record of comes from Egypt. Has an evil twin called Isfet, like polar opposites. Civilization. Well, if you look further in Egyptian mythology, you will see that Isfet, her husband Thoth, who became sort of the centerpiece to become Isis, Ishtar, Ashtaroth, all of the naughty love gods and goddesses. And this is absolutely what's going on with the succubi and incubi, who are exactly as are described in the Sumerian Enuma Elish as the Lilitu, these demonic entities, call them gods, would be nice to you if you gave them human sacrifices, if you did everything against you or destroy your whole city. And the name that is translated in the Bible as Almighty God, it does not mean Almighty God. It does not have anything to do with capital G God. El Shaddai is the triple goddess, the evil one, the one that you wore the evil eye to ward away. These traditions are based in truth, but they've been twisted. They're not necessarily CIA or FBI agents. They could be anything. They could be shape-shifting androids. They could be shape-shifting multi-tentacled creatures like you see in the Galaxy Quest movie. They could be anything. All of these images that we've been given in our culture are to prepare us to normalize effectively what we're going to be seeing on a routine basis if you're among the part of humanity that ends up going forward and becoming part of this galactic federation. And happening. Being integrated. Because the Galactic Federation has been infiltrated by the adversary, does not completely understand what's going on here, does not understand the spiritual basis, or does not maybe believe yet, or believes but, is going down a wrong path religious-wise. As anybody knows, it's easy to worship power, and that's not what the Most High God is all about. It's been about distribution of power, balance. As above, so below. We're testing stuff out here. And our because we have the most temptation to sin. We have the most blindness in our senses, the most naivete of our spiritual senses, our sense of karma. That's for a reason, so that we could test all the corner cases, so that we could test out governments that work. Because this perfect time that we're coming into had to do a lot of things, but the most important thing was to give as a Western style government in the it talks about council of gods, and it talks about the sons of God coming to earth and finding the daughters of men attractive. That's how it started. Those sons of God were not human. They were humanoid. They were the previous species that made up the highest heaven, and it was run maybe sort of like Mount Olympus, if you will. That might be a good model for That's how it was before humanity became the chosen species. We've been giving of God. Each new incarnation created a better version. One of them was built around Athens, the first democracy, and the teaching of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Those were useful things. And an earlier version of the highest heaven maybe was a little bit like Plato's Academy. Or let everybody vote. The stupid people will vote for whoever gives them the most shit. Or sells them the biggest bill of goods. Bad leaders, bad demagogues who talked them into, oh, let's go invade Egypt. Take that away from the Persians. Absolute horrible failure. They lost almost everything there. That's not talked about too much, although later on they did the same stupid thing by sending an expedition to Syracuse. This time it was with city that the Syracusans are abusing are our friends. They're one of our colonies, or part of this league. And they absolutely destroyed their little confederation by going to Syracuse. They didn't need to do it. There was societies wanted glory. And he was a good general, and he did well at it for a while until the stupid Athenians thought he's too successful. He's going to come back and become a dictator. And so they appointed another guy to go basically get in his way and gum up the works, shoot themselves in the foot. And that's exactly what the U.S. is doing for the last 30, 40 years, is shooting ourselves. You want to give more power to idiots who will vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump? These are not smart people. These are not smart people who worship celebrity cults. Question in any sane person's mind that there would be at least a dozen candidates on both sides that would be better capable of being president. We've got the two stupidest pieces of shit running against each other, both way too old to be president, in a time where really doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just telling you this because you may be able to change your destiny. Okay? You have a part to play in this, even if it's a small part. The thing is, you may not make that difference in this universe. If you make a choice to do something that's not part of your character's plan, you'll get to do it in your universe, and you will shape a different reality of your experience. And that different reality of your experience is how you grow in consciousness, how you become closer to being a god. Their ideal experience. They're trying to pull you into their delusion of a spiritual reality, rather than let you build your own. Build your own resonance with the person you are. Species has ever produced. He was a messiah character. Whoever the real Shakespeare was, and it wasn't the country bumpkin from Stratford upon Avon. That guy was an idiot, could not possibly have written those plays. Anybody who thinks so is a woke coat fool. Anything if you set your mind to it. No, you can't. In fact, you have to work at it. You have to earn it. You may not be able to earn it in this lifetime because you were born in the wrong place at the wrong time into the wrong character. This one. And they're trying to get you to blow your chance. And it's almost over. What's the most anybody has to live as a human being right now? 100 years? 110 maybe, tops. With all the best transhumanist technology that they've been producing behind the Great Firewall in China. That's not a long technology. You are playing with the adversary. You're playing with the people who have caused this collapse of our civilization. They are experimenting with you. That's what the whole pandemic was all about. They have been created. I'm probably going to get attacked for this, but I will tell you that AIDS, HIV, was created in the lab. It was an early effort to do depopulation and do it in a way with plausible deniability, because this disease was largely spread through needles, drug users, engaging in anal sex. But actually, the biggest spread was through needles, contaminated needles. And they're not telling you that because it was like, well, for all the gay people, they deserve it. And that sort of was part of their plan to discredit religion. There were a lot of people that during the AIDS epidemic became much more sympathetic to the LGBTQIA blah blah blah, even if they had been so many ways that you've been manipulated and controlled. And it's time to wake up. If you want to go to heaven, go to a better heaven, you got to wake up. You got to think out. And yes, it might be for better or worse. You might end up doing something you're going to regret. But I guarantee you won't regret it if you follow the 10 commandments. Follow the karmic commandment. You know that the cardinal karmic sin is tyranny. If you support tyranny, if you look the other way, if you evil, speak no evil. That is the most evil philosophy there is, because that is what allows evil to flourish. There's no such are actually satanic. Embrace the oh, come on. Why don't you corrupt my children? Oh, they need a little grooming. They haven't been groomed enough by their smartphone yet. I'm telling you, there are a lot of suggestion for go to Monty Python, dredge up the fish slapping dance. And that's a wonderful one. It was kind of directed at the time at the fish slapping dance, because the fish is the symbol of Jesus, right? But it actually is something you can make sense of dealing with any dogmatic person who just refuses to open their eyes and see evil right in front of them. And yes, it is evil if you do something that is going to add you to the Darwin We are not in the middle of a overpopulation. We are in the population slide, the birth rate versus death, and they up. Elon Musk, one of them, and that's the one good thing I can say about Elon Musk, is he's woke up to the fact that, boy, if we continue on the trajectory we're going, there won't be a human race. We all lose. At any rate, I hope this was useful. Trump with the Omnus Hour saying, happy karma.